Hello and welcome to another wonderful talk at the Positive Future for Health podcast. I'm your host, Althea Finch, creator of the Pain Free Method. How to be pain free or symptom free by tuning into you. And if you've got any problems about that and you need some help about that, you can find me at painfreedom.co.uk. And as well as teaching people how to be pain free with my method, I also host this wonderful podcast where I invite natural health experts and positive thinkers to share their wonderful experience, knowledge with all of us, so we can all benefit and improve our lives in multiple ways. And on today's podcast, we have Rob Drummond. And I met him recently. We've been on the most amazing, amazing business course with the famous Rachel Elnor, former dragon from Dragon's Den, from the TV series. And she's now incredibly holistic and on the call today as well.
So we have to
And we
say
did
nice things.
we do, but
Mm.
it's easy. It's easy. It's been incredible. Um, haven't been paid. And yeah, we've been on the most incredible journey over these last couple of months with Rachel with her business guidance, phenomenal business guidance. She started Red Letters, of course, multi-million pound business, but now she's incredibly holistic, which is why I came into her world and I just completely resonated with me. But this is where, so it's called the Dragon's Guide to Business. And do get in touch with Rachel Elnor if this is something that you need help with and you want to go down this road. So this is where Rob and I met, and we got to know each other's businesses and went along that journey. So, Rob, can you tell us about yourself? Who are you, though? Or more importantly, on this is your podcast. How did you get into what you do, and what who are you?
I got into business. I was an accidental entrepreneur. I had a career in marketing. I didn't like my employer. I was like, screw it. How hard could it be? I set off by myself. I didn't know much about myself. I didn't know much about myself really in hindsight.
Okay.
I got into business and things went well for a bit, but didn't really gain traction. But one of the things that I did do early on, so my first career was managing Google Ads for people. One of the things that I did do was I put up a website, I put up a lead magnet called Five Ways to Waste £1,000 on Google AdWords in no time flat. And people would opt in for that. And then I'd send them an email sequence of 14 automated emails that were sent out using a system called Aweber. And in those emails, I used to tell a bit of my story and how I got into it and stories about what made me me. And those stories were maybe a little bit different to how I tell them now or the stories I'd select now. But I noticed I was getting two types of clients. The first type of client was someone who just searched for Google Ads consultants. They'd seen my ad because I ran ads to promote myself. They phoned me from the website. They wanted to know how much I charged, what my hourly rate was. There was one guy who literally couldn't accept that I didn't have an hourly rate. They wanted to ask for references more often. And I brought on a few clients, and there were some good clients, but on the whole, of all of you think back to the nightmare clients where you had all of these like red warning bells jangling away early on. I'm like, oh
Yeah.
yeah, like those like those red warning bells were really obvious actually. And then there was a second type of client, so someone who had done the Google search, found my website, opted in for the lead magnet, how to waste £1,000 on Google AdWords in no time flat. They've been receiving my emails, reading my story. Some of them didn't get all the way to the end of the 14 emails, but they could reply. I encouraged them to reply to any of those emails. And some of my best clients, partway through, would just reply to me and say, I think it's time we had a chat. I've spoken to Google. I've spent all this money. I need help. I think I can trust you. I feel like you're in my corner. And those conversations were like a night and day comparison. Like I would get on a call with those people. They weren't haggling as much. They weren't asking for references. It was really just working out whether there was a project to be done and whether there was a fit. I was like, oh, so well, that I think is the power of story. It was a story that made the difference.
Mm.
And it wasn't like I really pinpointed the perfect story. I just showed them as myself and just told the first stories that came to mind really. and fairly direct stories about how I got into doing what I was doing. A few years later, I had a Google Ads client who used to train mountain guides. They used to take people off to Patagonia and northern Spain and all these places and teach them mountaineering and how to be a mountain leader, really. And I was managing the ads for this guy. And again, he was generating email opt-ins that would opt in for a system called Infusionsoft. And
Heard of that.
he had this email sequence, and in Infusionsoft, it kind of like snaked around, and there was about 75 emails in this sequence. But again, he just told stories. He told stories from the mountainside. He told stories of things that can go wrong. A lot of personal stories, a lot of stories from other mountaineers as well in the industry. So it wasn't always his story; it was stories around that. And it was quite a high value purchase. It was, people spent maybe $100,000 to go
Oh,
and do this thing. It was the equivalent of doing a degree, I guess, in the States. It was that kind of investment. So it's not something that you. I think people had to. So, but what was happening was that people would opt in from my ads. They'd read these emails, and the people who it was a good fit for would get this kind of feeling or resonance. And at some point, they would then go through the application process and have a conversation with his team. And again, it was the stories that did the selling. So I was like,
yeah.
oh, that's kind of interesting.
People
So
love stories, don't they?
people
They
people
love,
was yeah,
we feel and we connect and we relate to our own lives.
yeah.
I can really see that.
I've always had the sense that this was kind of true. So back when I was at school, I one of the subjects I did was literature, and all of my friends who did like maths and science and in air quotes real subjects used to kind of argue that I was just doing an A level and reading books. I was like,
You're speaking
yeah,
to a
I mean,
homeschooler.
yeah, I mean, I guess that's kind of true. Like I am just reading books, but I was like, I knew there was something more to it. It's like, well, why are we studying ma stories that are made up that have been codified and passed on? It's like, well, I think I didn't have the answer at the time. I just knew that there was something in it. I knew that there was something deeper. And I think now it's because these stories are giving you examples of how to live and how to deal with certain situations and how to react. So I think I've always had this sense that storytelling matters, and it's fascinating to me how my work goes in circles. And I keep coming back to storytelling as being the thing that, especially now, I think is needed more than anything. I think now that I've got kids and my kids are 7 and 5, what I want for them is to be sovereign humans. And I think to be a sovereign human, I think you need to know your story. You need to be able to tell your story. Because this is what tyrants through the ages have always done, is they've denied people their story. So I
Yeah.
think if
Well,
we
I,
want to build a
what,
different world, we have to be comfortable exploring our story, not view it as work that isn't doing work. Because the other thing for a business owner is when you go away and you take yourself to the coffee shop and you think, right, I'm going to explore my story and going to pinpoint all of these turning points. And then 10 minutes in, your brain goes, psst, you haven't built anything recently. Well, it's like, psst,
you haven't done your Facebook ads
you're not you're not
thing.
doing anything productive. So then it becomes derailed. So that's where my business has sort of emerged into, is in helping people, because it's quite hard to do by yourself. And I'm a living case study of this, where telling my own story was felt like pulling teeth out. Whereas I
Well,
can listen to
the
someone
thing
else
is,
and help.
that's it, isn't it? That's the golden thing, I think. You're listening to someone else.
Yeah.
And when we are social creatures. And when you're communicating, I might think, oh, do I tell this or tell that? Or I don't want to say this, or is that important? Or do people want to hear that? Or I don't want to say that. But when I'm talking to you, and a story guy, a professional story guy, what you do, I'm guessing you just pull out all the right relevant bits. And what do you mean about this? And what about whatever about that? I wanted this thing about children I wanted to bring up. When I'm a homeschooler, and
I'm an
I when
aspiring homeschooler. It's on the radar.
oh, if you want to chat about that,
Yeah, yeah.
see me later.
Yeah.
Um, and Einstein said, if you want your children to be intelligent, tell them fairy stories. And if you want them to be more intelligent, tell them more fairy stories. And I'm a creative. I'm all in the imagination head anyway. And I thought, great, Einstein said that. So I just sold on eBay one of the, it's funny it should be now, but they've just bought the Scottish fairy tale book, beautiful. And so I got one from Scotland, one from Ireland, one from England, one from Wales, and we did so much with it. We did so much extended from the stories. The stories themselves are brilliant. And of course, you've got little darlings. Well, mine were mine are talk back teenagers now, and they were little darlings.
Mine are
We had,
talkback 7 year olds.
oh no, you're in trouble.
Yeah, yeah.
Good luck. But yeah, we spent every single night, and my son started to read at 6.
Kids just run with it. Kids
They
just
run
run
with
with
it.
it, and then they go to school and it gets I think not prioritized or yeah,
Yeah,
I was going to say it's not literally beaten out of them, is it? But it's the system doesn't really support that.
on day one.
That's that time and space for exploration and imagination and so on.
But my kid learnt to read. He ran in the kitchen, started reading at 6. I was like, blimey, because it's difficult to trust when you don't know. But anyway, sorry, Rob, to interrupt, but I thought that was really important to bring up.
Yeah.
So you listen.
Yeah,
Beautiful.
I do listen. There's two aspects to it. There's the listening part, and there's a bit of an art to the listening part. So I basically think that anyone that isn't you can do the listening, but the art of the listener, and the listener I call the conversation partner, is the person who's in conversation with the person who's trying to tell their story. That person needs to participate in the conversation. Like it can't be an interview. It can't just be you asking questions and then scribbling down answers. It has to be a conversation. But you kind of have to keep yourself out of the way a bit as well. Like
Yeah,
in my work, this is something I've tried to like bring on people to kind of help with. And there's a real balance of finding people who, because you get some people who are like wannabe podcast hosts and they end up talking too much. Like it's still got to be about the person that you're speaking to, but
definitely.
you got to be really actively listening and knowing when to ask further questions, when to move the conversation on. So I think there's a little bit of nuance, but it's something that I think it's something that anyone can learn. It just takes a
I'm
bit of
in trouble.
practice.
I'm in trouble, Rob. I feel you're analysing me.
Well,
I'll be quiet.
so after the conversation part, you then got the analysis part, and I think that I'm actually a better analyst than I am necessarily as the conversation partner. Like my genius thing is the analysis of, particularly now it's especially easy to get a transcript very quickly from many of these tools of a 3 hour, 4 hour conversation. My thing then is then looking at that and saying, well, what are the threads? What stands out to me? Which parts of your story should you tell to support the message that you're trying to get across and the message that's going to inspire people, make people feel the right way, make people change the world in some way? How do we illustrate that using parts of your story that you can't see and don't see the value in because it's like trying to see the ground underneath your feet because you're standing on it.
Yeah.
Or it's like trying to look at the end of your nose and not be able to focus on it. Like
I
you can't see the value in it, but me as the conversation analyst can say, well, actually, you need to be telling this story.
I call it the goldfish bowl effect, that you may know all the details of your story, but you're in it. So you can't see what it's look you can't be objective looking at yourself.
That's it.
You just can't.
That's
Yeah.
it.
And you work with two particular kinds of people, two particular kinds of clients.
I do.
So can you just explain?
Yeah. So the first is business owners, and in particular entrepreneurs, people who've started their own work, people who are trying to enact a change in the world. I sometimes call it purpose-led business owners, people who are not just out to sell umbrellas when it's raining, or out to fix cars when cars break. I mean, that's fine if that's what you want, if that's the business that you want to run. And there's a need for umbrellas when it's raining. But I'm in the corner with people who are trying to deliver some work that really changes the world in some way.
Passion, vocation.
Yeah, because
Mm.
then what happens is if you have that type of business, people will categorize you and miscategorize you as something that you're not. So you have to show up and tell your story because then you're in this category of one where people put you correctly
I
in
love
their
that.
brain as the right thing.
Category of one. That's they talk about niching in business, isn't it? To really niche down, and then you track that perfect client, and you're a match, and they love you, and you love them.
Yeah. Yeah.
hopefully.
Yeah, I've done a lot of thinking about this, and I think I'm in the corner of small business owners because I think looking at the state of the world today, it's pretty obvious that the answers are not going to come from the top. The answers are going to come from the bottom, and us co-creating and collaborating and building
I
something that we
agree.
do want to move towards. So that's why I support small business owners in that way
Amazing.
as my first group. More recently, another passion of mine is helping preserve family stories. And there's been a few threads behind this. Because if you go back a few generations, every family has a war story
Mm,
across one of the two world wars. And I only found out fairly recently that my great granddad, who lived in the same house that I later grew up in, I always knew that he had his leg blown off by a shell at Passchendaele. What I didn't know was that he was left for dead in a trench, and an Australian soldier dragged him out and carried him off the battlefield.
wow.
I'm like, that's it just struck me as like this story that very nearly was lost because I'm three generations down the line. So I'm hearing not just second-hand tales, but third-hand tales. And it's almost like you're left with this game of Chinese whispers, where there's a story that matters, that it was
Yeah.
someone who really put themselves at risk to save my great granddad. And I almost didn't hear about it. I was a bit. I've got quite a few friends in Australia, and I was a bit nicer to them for at least a few days after I learned that.
But
But
also,
then
and also, when you come along, you're the position you are in the family, and you hear it from the people that you're listening to, but which might not be the whole, as you've discovered, it's not the whole story. It's not the original version.
it's not from the horse's mouth. Yeah.
Yeah.
The great storyteller in my family was my granddad. So yeah, I position myself as this story guy. I'm really like a story sponge. I just like absorb stories and kind of think, oh, you need to be telling this one in this place. The great storyteller was my granddad.
Mm.
And growing up, I used to spend a lot of time with my grandparents because my parents worked full time or mostly full time. So I remember particularly in the summer holidays, we'd go over to, it was about 20 minutes to my grandparents' house. This is on the Wirral Peninsula between Liverpool and Wales. And in the morning, we'd go out and we'd walk the dogs. I remember one summer, it was the summer of 1995 actually, because I remember one day watching Jonathan Edwards break the triple jump world records in two successive jumps. And there was a drought that summer. It was bakingly hot. So we used to go over to my grandparents. We'd go up to Thurston Common and walk the dogs in the morning. So Thurston Common, the Wirral isn't a particularly hilly place, but Thurston Common's the highest point, and you walk up to a ridge. Straight ahead of you, you can see over the River Dee to North Wales. Behind you, you can see the Wirral, and then over the Mersey to Liverpool. And we go up there, we walk the dogs. The dogs are disappearing off into bushes. My granddad was this like fount of knowledge. Like he would tell you which butterflies were what. He would identify birds. He'd tell you which ones are swifts.
Fabulous.
It points out Anglesey if you were able to see it. So on a very clear summer day, you can see all the way to Anglesey from Thurston Common. We'd also talk to people. He used to feel like he kind of knew everyone. And we'd get up there. There'd always be a bunch of fellas sitting on a bench up there, just like watching out over the Dee and over the estuary. And he'd chat to them. He'd introduce me, and then we'd go and walk the dogs. We'd go down off the ridge onto the common, and he'd tell stories. He'd tell me about how he grew up in Norris Green in Liverpool. He was born in 1934, and he'd tell me about his five brothers and one sister, and how his sister Marjorie taught him to read. He'd tell him how his brother Les was trouble and always getting in trouble and want to be avoided. It
Don't
tell
know
you,
that one.
yeah, it tell you how they used to go and watch Everton play, and the reason they used to go and watch Everton instead of Liverpool was because at the time they knew a way to jump over the fence and get in for free. And then it tell you as well that like when you walk to the grounds, there were people who were selling fades. So kind of fruit that was kind of gone past you. So you'd be able to buy like cheap pears and things like that. He he would tell you about one day during the war when they jumped over the fence as per usual to get in for free. Only because it was during the war, the attendances were right down, and they jumped into an empty stand with just a police officer. So they all scrambled back over quick. And he had a scar. He had a scar in his hand where he caught
Oh
some railing
no.
on. He caught some railing on the back over on the way back over.
Did they get away?
He did get away. He did get away.
Good.
He also had a scar in his nose where he fell off a motorbike. He had a motorbike for many years, and he said that one day he was going across a crossroads, and this car just appeared from nowhere, and he ended up on the bonnet of this car, and the guy in the car was doing this, saying, "Get off!" And he was like, well, I can't do anything." He'd tell you about cycling. He'd tell you how he used to cycle to Wigan in the 1950s to watch them play rugby league. He'd tell you how he cycled to Canterbury once, all the way down in Kent,
Oh,
because and it did tell you a lot about how the roads were a lot safer. But then also how he had to cycle back in a mad rush because he was late for work. He would tell you about all of the mountains he climbed up, which is basically all of them. He'd tell you about his friend called Ernie, who I heard a lot about but never actually met. He'd tell you how he met Jimmy Connors on Hadrian's Wall, but didn't really
oh,
realize it at the time. He only realized walking away. It's like, that guy's got a security detail. At the end of walking around the common and him telling all these stories about Liverpool and Novice Green and his brothers and so on, we get to there's a big rock called Thor's Rock in Thurston, and you can climb on this. It's perhaps not that big for an adult, but when you're 10, there was easy ways up and hard ways up. So I'd always try the hard way. My granddad was the great mountain climber, and he'd be pointing out. He'd over encourage you. He'd say, "Look, if you jump, there's a finger hold just above your head." I'm like, I'm not jumping for a finger hold. When 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 we got back, we'd play games on his floor. So we used to play Monopoly. We also used to play rugby, which is just one-on-one, basically wrestling on this like suspended floor that made a huge noise. We then used to go and watch rugby. So we went and watched a series of largely failing rugby union teams. And it was on the way back from one of these matches that I mentioned to him in his gold micro, sucking the mandatory Rovers original, that the local football team, Tranmere Rovers, had just got to Wembley to the League Cup final. And that I might like to go, but I didn't think I'd get a ticket. And nothing really more was said about it. And the tickets went on sale. And then it was in the local newspaper the next day that a bunch of fans had camped out in the ticket office car park at Tranmere Rovers to be first in line for tickets. This was in January. It's freezing cold.
wow.
Of course, you can guess who was in that queue, can't you? Uh, my, he, he never said he was going to do it, but he just showed up the next day very tired with these tickets. So we went down to,
No, no fence to climb on that one
no
then.
offense to climb on that one, no, no. So we went down to Wembley to watch Tranmere play. He told me how he cycled down here and whatnot. Um, I think when David Kelly equalised for Tranmere, he didn't really. I think as an Evertonian, he didn't really know where to put himself. Um, but yeah, and then a year later, Tranmere actually played Everton at Goodison Park, and we were 2-0 up at half time. And as he was the only Everton fan to ring, I called him just to check it's in the score. As the years passed, the climbing stopped, the walking stopped, we stopped going to the Common so much, we stopped going to Thurston so much, but the stories didn't stop. We'd go to the pub, we'd go for meals out. He had these like twinkly eyes. He'd always ask, "How's Robert then? How's life in Sheffield?" And he'd share the same stories, but they were all good stories. The last time I saw him as himself, when he knew who I was, and as I remember him, we went round to his house. This was in 2020. It was just after the COVID stuff kicked off, and he came down the stairs on a chairlift, and I said to him, "Are you all right?" And he looked at me and he smiled. He said, don't get old, Rob. Old age is a terrible thing. But he got to play with my son Hugo. My son Hugo was 2. My son Hugo doesn't really remember him. He remembers Grandad Roy as a thing, but not as a person. He got
Mm.
to hold my daughter Ruma, who was a few months old. Just before we left, I said to Hugo, "Come on, come and say bye to Great Grandad Roy." I said, "Come and say bye to Grandad Roy." So Hugo comes up, he says, "Bye, Grandad Roy." And my granddad shakes his hand and smiles at him and says, "Great Grandad Roy." Not long after that, he passed on, and I wrote up a lot of these stories, a lot of these
Yeah.
memories, and I spoke at his funeral, which to date is the best and hardest thing I've ever done. But I still feel like it's secondhand stories. Like I've got a lot of these memories. I'm the story sponge in the family that's been sponging up all of these stories, and I'm able to regurgitate a lot of these stories in a lot of detail. But if you think about my granddad's life, it's only a slice. It's only a slice of the
Yeah.
pie,
Yeah.
and it's only my version of it. So
Mm.
wouldn't it be better to hear it from him, to hear his stories about Norris Green and
Yes.
Everton and Ernie? So that's what
I mean, I mean, already,
bit of a long detail, but that's what my Wise Echo service is about. It's having those conversations and recording them so that you can pass them forwards, and that your great grandkids, so his great grandkids, my son and daughter,
yes.
be great if they felt like they actually knew him.
Yeah, that'd be amazing. And on record, because you do it on videos, and you're thinking about doing microbooks as well, but on videos. I mean, my dad videoed his wedding with my mum and did some other bits and pieces. And we used to all sit down as a family when we were little and watch the cine film. Of course,
Yeah,
there was no sound at that stage, and
yeah,
Dad would be narrating it as we watched it, sort of thing. You know, it was lovely. But looking at these things now, that's my dad. But it's obviously beautiful. You're telling this, wonderful detailed story, and it's your personal experience with your granddad. But yeah, to have him himself say this and this and that, and you're the one that draws it out. I think that's beautiful. I
yeah,
think it's really beautiful what you're doing, and I think so many people. It's going to touch so many hearts by this.
yeah. There's an emerging artistic element to it. So what we do is what I'll normally speak to someone for 2 or 3 hours, because after 2 or 3 hours everyone's tired and it's kind of enough. And yeah, for someone in their 70s or 80s, you're not going to go through their entire life story in 2 or 3 hours, but you'll get a good feel for them and who they are. And we'll normally pinpoint 10 or 12 stories that we might put into individual videos.
Mm.
What I'm now looking at doing is putting those stories on a USB drive that's styled like a cassette. So it's
Mm.
so that's what they kind of take delivery of. But then also creating this kind of micro book of the conversation with a cover. So for the photo for the cover would be a picture of them in conversation with me that I'd pass to an artist to create an impression of for the
I
book
mean,
cover.
we're talking about which artists. So if you know an artist, but we were talking about what is his name? It's not Fern, is it? It's not Fern. It doesn't sound right. It's a girl's name, isn't it? But the one who's been doing the all the Truth Movement
Yeah.
portraits did Tess Lorry recently.
Yeah, I've just picked up
I
Tessa's
think,
book, and it's what prompted me to think, oh, this is actually a really
yeah,
great book cover, and wouldn't it be great for these
yeah,
conversations to not only have the USB file and the videos, but also have the book as well.
yeah. Well, I can get in touch with him for you if you like, and put you together to have a chat.
That'd be great. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
fantastic. If I can remember his name.
Yeah.
Forget details sometimes. I
It's just
know
the
him.
problem with live conversations, isn't it? You get off, and I'm like
Ah!
10 minutes later, it comes. Yeah,
So you'd end up with this beautiful book of yours, of your elder, or whoever it is,
yeah.
and it would be a family heirloom, wouldn't it?
It's a family heirloom. Yeah. So by default, stories stay within the family, but I'm also holding
Yeah.
space for the idea that some stories you might want to share publicly. And I ask permission for people, look, can I share this? Or partly because it promotes my work to see someone else's story. But I think this comes back to the thing about storytelling, where storytelling is about possibilities, and hearing someone else's story always causes some of your own memories to come to the surface. And
Yeah.
this is why stories are inspiring. So I ask permission to share if there's a story that I think has sort of wider. Every now and again, someone will probably tell me that. a story where I'm like, oh, there's gold in here.
I've
Um,
got the name. Jake Fern.
oh, yeah,
I thought
that's
it was
it.
a
Yeah,
Fern. I thought Fern doesn't sound like a man's name.
yeah,
Jake Fern. That's
Jake
it. That's
Fern.
it.
Mm,
Met him at Hope Sussex, that wonderful place.
yeah,
Yeah. Sorry, Rob.
yeah. So yeah, I'm thinking of like a public YouTube. I say YouTube. It might not be on YouTube, but a public video channel, perhaps even an annual collection of some of my best stories that people have contributed to a
That sounds
wise
cool.
to a Wise Echoes annual. Um, and again, this
Fantastic.
is about maintaining that kind of lived experience, lived knowledge, and passing that forwards. Because I think it seems if you follow the cycles of history, it seems like we forget everything every 100 years or so.
Yeah, because it's like, you might know your parents a bit, so their stories, maybe your grandparents, maybe even your great grandparents, maybe a sprinkling of bit further back here and there. I mean, we've got a researcher in the family, and she's brilliant. She's done our family tree and all this sort of thing. But I'm not like that. But we tend to sort of hear the immediate family, but not as it goes back. Yeah, 100 years is sort of the max dose, really, isn't it? You
We
sort
we
of
all end up
vague.
as dusty names on a family tree.
We do
Yeah,
dust to dust.
yeah,
And I just want to say, if anyone wants to ask Rob questions, talk directly to him, just wave your hand and I can unmute you. Please do. Yeah, so yeah, you were saying it goes back about 100 years or so. Um,
yeah.
and this
I
is
mean, you
this
might
is
meet your great grandparents, but it's probably unless they live for a very long time, it's unusual that you'll really get to know them, I think.
Yeah, and that's it, isn't it? And how do people what do people just contact you and you just book a date and you start talking and get on with it?
Pretty much, yeah. So there's two ways of doing it. I've been doing a few Zoom conversations with people, especially for people who are not based in the UK or within reasonable traveling distance. So I have a Zoom option. So I've been speaking. Had conversations with people in Australia, New Zealand, California. But yeah, I've also
Amazing.
been working on a studio setup where I either drive or ride to your house. So I was very specific to my audio guy that the equipment had to fit on the motorbike. So yeah, so I basically show up like Mary Poppins with this bag of stuff and then explode out this studio. And it's
Wow.
fascinating. This is an evolving process because you show up at someone's house, you got to very quickly gauge the lighting and the setup and where to set things up and where to position them.
Mm.
And then usually what they do is they make you a cup of tea and just start telling you a story straight away. And I'm like, whoa, 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 whoa.
Don't
So
speak.
so you have to keep asking for biscuits and like tasking them to get you things to give you a bit more time to set up. So yeah, I'm still working on the operations of that side of things, but yeah,
It sounds like a lovely idea to go to someone's home if you can,
yes,
because they're going to be comfortable, all their bits and bobs, and they're, oh, I've got that picture. I'll show you that picture or
yeah,
whatever it is. Or
yeah,
this ornament is blah blah blah, and
yeah.
it sounds perfect. I mean, my
Mm.
so
I've
and
sent
then but
people a
then to
few.
find out all the logistics and the lighting and everything. I was just filmed recently, and he spent 2 hours faffing about with all the lighting and the where to position everything,
Yeah,
and it's a whole technique, isn't it?
it is. Yeah, I'm very much aiming for the 80/20 principle of getting 80% of the benefit from 20% of the setup time. Um, and it's mostly about getting good quality audio and having reasonable lighting. Is
Hmm.
the big payoff. I think the more time you spend on it, then you got to really, really dial in the lighting setup
Yeah.
and so on. But just from having a moderate setup and a bit of attention to detail, the plan eventually, or one possibility, is to convert this into a franchise business and have people all over the world uh, with the setup that they buy into when they buy the franchise, and
Mm.
and having the process and going out and having conversations with these people.
Wow. That's just going to put it out there and then some, isn't it?
Yeah,
And is that franchise option ready at the moment, or this is
it's not.
something in the
It's not.
cards?
No, no. This is all in development at the moment.
Okay. And so if people so if somebody's really poorly and but they want to share their story and the family want them to share their story, so you just sort of adjust, I suppose, to your 80/20 principle and see what you can
Just do the
do.
best we can. Just do the best we can. I mean, the bare minimum of recording setup is we just have a conversation with them on the telephone.
Yeah.
That's one option. It's better if we can record in video as well, obviously, because you get to see them. But if all you're left with is someone's voice, I think that's 100% improvement on not on just holding dust.
Yeah. I think it's a lovely idea. And then you give your grandchildren or that connection with someone's gone. And as you say, you remember it, but you obviously enjoyed your time with your granddad
Yeah.
and hearing all this outpouring of this and this and the other. It's wonderful. I mean, my mom was a storyteller too. She was a social person and had lots of knickknacks everywhere in the house, and she had a story about everything, and it was just a whole world of of um of not magic going into story all the time when you spoke to her. She knew everything. She was like your granddad. I mean, she'd come back from the bus and she'd tell you all about this one who'd got this problem and that thing and that life. I said, "Who's that then?" "Oh, I just met her." She'd have your story down pat in 5 minutes.
I think everyone's got a story to tell. Like, so
Yeah.
some people are more forthcoming and naturally skilled at the telling of it, but I kind of believe that the human animal is a narrative oriented creature that we, even if someone asks you how your morning's gone or what you did yesterday, like you can't help but tell a story about it.
Yeah,
It's just that some people have more of a natural flair for the telling of it. But I think that with the conversation partner and doing it in guided conversation, I think that anyone can do this, and I do think that every story matters.
definitely. And you definitely have the skill, as you say, a story sponge to draw out the interesting pieces. I went through a little mini guidance thing with you recently, and it was I'm not a writer. I don't class myself as a writer, but of course we all write. We all have stories, you say. But I found it fascinating how you listen to somebody's story or you're telling a story, and then you kind of dissected it into how it's interesting and how the bits that make it interesting, the bits that draw you in, and then you turned it around and looked at it from another viewpoint, and then from another viewpoint, and then from another viewpoint. I found it fascinating. I thought, yeah, it does. That's. I was listening to the story just as I was, and understanding it just as I was, but you picked it out and just changed my whole focus on it, and it was fascinating. And yeah, so when somebody is not very good at sort of sharing and things, I guess that's really important. I remember when I'm just about to come out with my book, and not being a writer, I'm struggling, with the AI and what do I put in? Then one of my first interviews, this girl was a bit like you, and she said she started off and she said she's very good at just finding the nut of who somebody really is. And she was. And because of that, I started writing my book because she
Lovely.
encouraged me. I felt encouraged to share significant pieces of my story. And
I
I
think the
began
sharing
writing
is
the
a
book.
muscle. It's a muscle that we all have, and some people are. If you obviously if you don't use a muscle, it atrophies, and but it's still there, and
Still
you can
there.
still practice it. So yeah, so that call that you joined, I'm considering renaming to the Story Gym. So for in particular business owners who want to come to the Story Gym, I'm like the PT at the front, giving you
Tell us about
exercises to
this. Tell us
do.
about
Yeah,
that.
that's it. That's it. Yeah, and
What about
it's like
that?
going to boot camp. Yeah, yeah,
Tell story boot camp.
yeah.
Perfect.
Hmm.
And of course, when you share your story, it's not just the story. It's a kaleidoscope of your feelings, your personality, life that you live, the circumstances, like its granddad. It was wartime. It was other people. It was moral guidance and learning and things like that. And it's. I think maybe that's why it's so in depth and why it's so engaging when somebody listens to a story. I mean, I remember with the kids I came across um oh gosh Jacques anyway, these incredible stories in detail, and it was about animals, and it was perfect for the children, but it was really adult as well, and it was talking about really people and people's lives and moral question choices, and it was all done in his name will come in a minute. And his it was all about the characters, and they're all just creatures and animals, and using natural things. And I cook a lot and grow things, and it was all in there with jellies and jams and cheeses they'd made and socks they sewed and whatever. It was completely engaging, incredible. So, when you bring out the right bits, when you're a good storyteller, or you get it drawn out by someone like you, it's completely engaging. I want to speak to you about my business stories. I think you'll just clinch it for me, I feel, to, oh, you've unmuted, Rob, or did I mute you? Whoops, did I do that?
Yeah, so I'm muting myself, and then Zoom wouldn't let me wouldn't let me unmute. So I
Oh
was like,
no,
oh no,
the
oh
guest has got to speak.
no. Yeah, that's it.
I'm on my own.
Yeah,
I
so
can't help you, anyone.
I'm not going to press mute again. Yeah.
Yeah, so when the story is told, not only is it a whole wealth of it gets your imagination going, but and real help and guidance or whatever. But uh, when a story is told well, I mean, those Brian Jack, have you heard of him? Brian Jack.
I have, but I'm drawing a blank on this on the association.
Absolutely, absolutely. I think he's passed on now, but he's absolutely brilliant. I came across this one in one of these secondhand bookshelves shops, and I thought, gosh, what is this? My son brought it over, and he's a war guy, and it was all like fighting and swords on the front. I thought, oh, God, there's a big thick book like this. I thought, oh, God, really? And I thought, fine,
Yeah,
I'll read it. Oh my gosh, fantastic,
it's
completely absorbing.
it's always the stories that you almost share as an afterthought that you think no one's going to be interested in. It's those stories that seem to get the best response
Okay.
because we're all generally a poor judge of like our own story and
Mm.
which ones matter. So yeah, I can see this from doing the marketing work and having the email sequences, and then you look at the email open rates of different stories, and it's always surprising to me which ones have the highest engagement rates.
Yeah. And even
So
on
you
Facebook, I
have to
mean,
just keep sharing because you can't judge in advance what's gonna hit the mark.
okay, that's a good marketing strategy,
Mhm.
or sharing strategy. And yeah, even like on Facebook, I think, am I being shadow banned? Nobody's clicking and liking and whatever.
Well, you
And
might be being shadow banned, who knows?
I might be
Yeah, yeah.
what I've shared. And but I was thinking like, I feel like I'm sharing lots of, well, to me, it's very important things, and you got to know this stuff kind of stuff. But every now and again, like recently, I'm really blown away when I share a personal story. And it might be something really simple. Like just recently, my Christmas cactus has bloomed. It's the most extraordinary
My wife's got
flowers.
one of those. Yeah.
Yeah, and they're blooming now, aren't they,
I'm
in
like,
Christmas
what is
time?
it? What is this cactus doing blooming in November? But
I know.
here we are.
It's, and it's extraordinary. It's like this backward facing, incredible colors and this little kind of stalk antennae, whatever. And it's just, anyway, so I shared this. I said, look, isn't this amazing? And just two sentences. My mom gave it to me about, I don't know, 15 years ago or something. And Grazna, I think you commented on it, wasn't it? I think you remarked on it. And yeah, so I think of mum, and she used to give me plants all the time, and this one just keeps blooming every year. The most exquisite flowers, and I had them on mass reaction from people, and not my marketing thing, and buy my thing, damn it.
I think the
But
pendulum
this,
is slowly swinging back. I think we're almost starved of real authenticity. And AI is
yes,
making this worse, where it's easy to flood the internet with regurgitated stuff that just isn't you. And if it just isn't
yeah,
you, it's not going to resonate correctly. Like
yeah,
the truth has a resonance, you being authentic has a resonance, and people can sense that when you do put it out.
yeah, and it's coming in full and hard, isn't it? We had a big long discussion in Rachel Elnor's um let me get the name of it again.
A Dragon's Guide to Business.
Thank you. You're good with words. I'm not good with details. Thank you. A Dragon's Guide to Business. We had a big old long ding dong talk about AI, left, right, center, and I used AI to get myself in gear with the book because I was just not getting in gear, getting lost in the woods so much. And I've put the brakes on, and I want to rethink it because I thought,
Mm.
well, it is. It's all very clean, perfect, and all the grammar's there, but it's lost the essence of me. So I'm having to
Right.
rethink it all because of that discussion.
I have some comments on this actually. So if I'm helping a business owner to tell their story, sometimes people then hire me to prepare the final book chapter or whatever the final output is.
Oh,
I have some clients where AI has been a lifesaver in terms of converting that conversation into the finished LinkedIn posts, book chapter, whatever it is. Often it'll be people who have quite an indirect way of speaking, so I can task an AI with writing it in direct language and simplifying words potentially. There's some projects that I just wouldn't have got out of the door without AI helping. But then there's other
yeah,
clients where I don't use it at all because if you feed it through AI, it stops sounding like them and you lose the essence of their voice. So I have to
exactly.
kind of gauge it holistically a little bit.
Mm.
So I
Use the
do
tool.
use AI, but I use it more in the middle of the process for some of the grunts work of analyzing
Yeah.
transcripts and picking out threads. It's very good at stuff like that.
Use it as a tool, for a useful tool, not to be the leading authority on what you're doing.
Not as a
Yeah.
push button creative magic button for presenting your true core essence and genius to the world because it can't.
Yeah. Exactly, exactly. I mean, because I wrote my I have a whole program with my pain-free method, but I put it into book form, and I was just getting lost in the woods, and it's a long project. And I'm a creator. I'm sort of a spark at the front, and then run out of energy at the back. So I was, and hit. I was just like, oh, AI help me with this chapter, that chapter, that chapter. And then I was like, of I don't know, 30 chapters, I got to about 10 or 11. And I was just like, oh, just write my book, will you? And he said, yes, I'd be happy to do that. It sounds really interesting. It's very clever what you're doing.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Gets your ego going. And it went and put it all into chapters. I thought, blimey. I said, well, it's not very cohesive. Do you think, would you like me to write it so it's more engaging and then
Mhm.
it flows better? I thought, yes, please.
Oh, I mean, one thing you can do is you can ask it to critique your book. You can ask it to act as an expert copy editor and say, please don't make any changes, but please give me some pointers on things that I might work on the manuscript.
Oh, writing it down quick.
Yeah, yeah. So it's very good at acting in the capacity of a guide or an expert. Like people are using this for to go to court and things like that. So if you can't hire a lawyer, then
Yeah,
you might use AI to please act as a lawyer and advise me what I need to be aware of before I walk into this courtroom, for instance.
yeah.
You're
Because of
not
course,
getting it to be you in the courtroom. You're still being yourself.
yes,
But yeah,
and of course, it's being fed from multiple, endless people, thousands of people worldwide, feeding in that from experts and everybody in between.
yeah,
And in seconds, I mean, in a few seconds, it's gone.
yeah,
That's very, and it compliments you quite a lot, which I quite like. So
yeah,
that's really good. That's very engaging. People would really like that.
yeah. I think books are a minefield, though. I think books take on a life of their own, and often the book that you're writing by the end isn't necessarily the one that you were writing at the start. And
Okay, I'll keep that in mind.
yeah,
But it's so helpful, isn't it? And what did I want to say about that? Um, sorry, I've lost my track.
AI helpful.
Yeah. So, yeah, you're very good at kind of, as you say, a story sponge.
Mm.
So if people have a lot of things in their life, which by the time they get to 60s, 70s, 80s, or whatever it is, of course we've been through so much. And what do you share? I mean, with my method, I've done it for 35 years, and it's actually entwined into who I am in my own life for 50 something years. And what do I share, and how do I entwine that? Is it even what people want to hear? So I love that you're a story sponge and you just draw it out and then you help them,
You're
you put it
extracting a
into.
snapshot at that moment in time. You're not extracting the full story because the full story is this big, messy thing. I once heard
Yeah.
an author called Kathy Rensenbrink describe it as being like an anatomically incorrect octopus with different tentacles of different lengths all flailing around. And in
That's
telling
very
in
good.
telling the story, you're almost taming the octopus because if you don't tame the octopus, it'll fester and cause all sorts of problems as well. So it's worth telling a story to tame it as well. But yeah, in what I'm doing, it's a snapshot of. we're just telling the stories that come up at this particular moment in time.
Okay. And if anybody wants to ask a question, because we're going to finish soon, and if you have any questions, you want to share a bit of your story, perhaps? Galeza, did you want to share? Yeah, just click on mute.
Yes, I used to write early, but I wrote fiction and then I got lost in it. But I was thinking now when Rob was talking about, well, did I get that right? And about my grandmother. I mean, she was extraordinary person during the war. She was feeding the town with. She had to risk her life to get to countryside to get some meat or whatever. I mean, it's very interesting. And the constant fear of being shot on spot because if German soldiers, which were around everywhere, spot that she was getting something, she would be shot. But she also was amazing storyteller. I used to love sleep with her because she would tell me ghost stories. And yeah, if I got them all together, it would be brilliant because they are really very believable. I believe her. And then I went through experience with the ghost. So yeah, I mean, this is very, very good, encouraging postcard. I really like it.
Thank you.
It made me think.
Yeah. This goes back to I think everyone does have a war story as well in the family, and yeah, they're always there.
And
Mm.
it's always very dramatic, isn't it? Because of course it was.
Yeah.
It was a serious. I
But
can't
yeah,
imagine.
it doesn't have to be that those stories that you have to tell though. I mean, this is the other thing that people think is that their story, they haven't done anything interesting. Like my story doesn't matter. I just go to work, I just do this, and then it's like you just do this. It's like well, when you really dig into it, there's always interesting things there. You might have to scrape away at the surface a little bit, but I do think everyone has an interesting story.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for sharing, Grazna. And recently, a friend of mine got in contact. They said, "Oh, my son, he's a videographer, and he was asked by the local council to bring together people's stories from all over the borough." And he put together a film, and he filmed. He wanted like an old couple, or a young one, or the student, and a couple, and a woman, and a man, he was looking for interesting stories in the borough, and it was extraordinary. I mean, I'm a connector, so I knew loads of people, and my friend knew that I lived here and who I am, and I didn't know the full extent of their stories, which was extraordinary. I mean, we've got an Ukrainian family living upstairs, which is a bit on point for this time. It was right in the middle of the war of when all the war started there as well, so it was right on point for relevance. And yeah, he said, "Oh, do you know? I'd like to know a Ukrainian family." So well, he's upstairs. So that was amazing, and I found out about all their story. And then there was the honeyman down the road, and hearing about all his story, and then that every one of them spread to more stories and more people. And there was this amazing lady who is like one of the key people in the borough, and he put together this wonderful film, and a bit like you, drawing out stories, but putting it onto a photography, to video to share with the public. And I'm sure many people didn't know these people, and it puts it on a platform, and that
Making
could be the
visible
same.
something that was previously invisible.
That's right. I mean, if you're like me, and if you live in the community, and as I said, I'm a connector. I do lots of things, and I had children, so that sort of spread a lot of paths, made a lot of paths for me, and I know a lot of people. But if you're not like that, and you live your life like that a bit, yeah, it was amazing, and just brought up the value of the borough and made a sense of community. Um, and I felt very proud. I didn't end up being on the final cut, but I, I felt very proud that I'd put him into contact with half the people. And he found the most extraordinary stories. There was one guy and his wife, who were running a cake shop in the area. And I haven't even visited this cake shop. It turns out that he's an opera singer who gave up his career. I think he was Russian, Ukrainian, or something. He gave up his career to run the cake shop to make a business with his wife. And because it was so busy, he couldn't get in. He couldn't become a an opera singer in this country for various reasons. So he had to give it up. And he sang, and it was just what a story. you know? And who'd have known? Who'd
Who'd
have
have known?
known? Who'd have
The-
known? So it's absolutely wonderful. So, Rob, how do people get in touch with you? What's the first step to get this started, this story started with you?
Yeah. So for the multi-generational stories, it's Wise Echoes as the service. It's wiseechoes.com. For the business owner services, the story gym, it's storysellinglab.co.uk. I am
Lovely. So the
I am
first one
working
is the people. The
the first
first
one
one
is
is
the
like a
people.
family thing.
I am working on a single domain that will link to both of these things, and that's at storyrob.com. If anyone is live on the call and happens to go to that domain, you'll see a very work in progress site. But storyrob.com will send you to both the memoir service and the business owner service.
Okay, and that's all coming in the franchising in the future.
Franchising in the
So
future.
if you have a personal story to share, that's the first one, Wise Echoes. And I'll put all this is in your contacts as I send out and create the replay for you and for everybody to listen to. And it'll be on my website at painfreedom.co.uk to find out if you miss any of this, or you can just go straight to Rob's contacts there, he mentioned. And I'll be sharing it with the replay as well, which will be on my website by tomorrow and multiple platforms. And also, if you're listening to the recording, please like, share, and subscribe. And it puts this opportunity out for so many more people when you do that, everyone. And hit the notification bell so you get the replay sent straight to you. So, Rob, this has been really delightful, and I'm going to get in contact with you myself.
Perfect. Look
I
forward to it.
fantastic. I feel I just need that drawing out, that putting into concrete,
Yeah.
um and I so want to help people with my thing, and I feel that you can help me with that, which is what you do, isn't it? So
It's
I'm really
about
looking
traction and
forward to
impact at the end of the day. Yeah.
traction and impact. There it
Yeah.
is. Thank you so much. So I'll get in touch myself, and do get in touch, people, if you want to share your story, or you know somebody who wants to share their story, you want to encourage them, or you like me, a business owner, small business owner that wants to connect better with your potential clients. Do get in touch. Rob, it's been absolutely delightful. Thank you
I've
so,
loved it,
so
Althea.
much for
Thanks for
coming
having me
on.
on. Yeah. Thank you very
Thank you.
much.
And thank you, everybody, for joining us. The podcast is always the listeners and the guest. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. And Rob, I always like to leave my guest with the last word. How would you like to leave people today? A thought, something to consider, or how would you like to leave people today?
Inspired to go forth and share one story that they have not shared for a while.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Rob. Wonderful. Thank you very much. And thank you, everybody, for joining us. Have a wonderful day.